We've been going through a couple of divisions a week here. This week, you got an NFC East fan and two AFC East fans and one NFC East fan. So why don't we take a look at some of those win totals and division odds and to throw up the screen there. Let's start with the NFC East. There you see the favorites to win the division, no surprise, are the Eagles, followed by the Cowboys, and then longer shots with the Commanders and the Giants. You see those win totals up on the screen there. You can not pick anything, or there could be something you love or hate. Why don't you, Jared, you kick us off here as a Giants fan. Anything that you see in a division you know well?
None of these really jump out to me. I don't want to lay that much juice to bet the Eagles over, and I'm not taking the under with them. I'm avoiding the Giants altogether. I'm just down on I'm down on Daniel Jones. Obviously he's not going to be the long-term quarterback, probably past this season. I would imagine he'll get shut down at the end of the year and they'll move on from him. If I were to pick one of these, I think I would take Commanders over 6.5. And it's really more it's an anti-Giants pick. It's an anti-NFC East pick to an extent, but I am a believer in Jaden Daniels. I do like Dan Quinn as a coach in terms of at least helping him on the defensive side of the ball. It's new era there in Washington. Obviously, with the new ownership they have with Josh Harris and Magic Johnson now running the show, new coach, new GM. I feel like for the first time in a long time, they actually have a sense of what the hell they're doing. So, if I were going to pick any of these, I'd probably lean towards that one.
Coop, what do you like looking at the NFC East there?
I like the term you use there, anti-NFC East play, because I do worry a little bit. Like the Eagles are obviously the wagon. I don't want to bet against them. I do worry a little bit that, you lose Jason Kelsey. That's a big leader, the quarterback of your offensive line. It's also, the tush-push might not be as effective without him. The Cowboys, man, that's one where I think I would actually be willing to bet the under. And usually I've been a Cowboys supporter. It's just, we make all this talk about from the top down and how it's all about, how the organization's run. And Jerry Jones seems to really have screwed this up. He has left this team so thin. If anything happens to CeeDee Lamb or Dak Prescott, they're done. The season's done, right? Because, they have nothing else for wide receivers. They didn't go out and get a running back. They lost Tyron Smith. They lost Tyler Biotish. Like, what is there to be said about? When Jerry Jones said they were going all in, what was he even talking about? Right? Like, they did none of it. They did not go the complete opposite of going all in. And then you look at their schedule, and it's like, they better beat some of these tough teams early, right? Like, they're playing Cleveland, Baltimore, Pitt, Detroit, San Francisco, Philly, Houston, Philly again, right? The Bengals, like the schedule is brutal. They need to win both the games against Washington, both the games against the Giants, and then down the stretch, they got games like Tampa Bay. If they get any injuries early on, they could lose games in the easy part of the schedule later, and they'd be in big trouble. So I will bet against the Cowboys. Plus, we got so many Cowboys fans tied to Fantasy Alarm and all our crew. It's fun to root against, like Jimbo and Britt Flynn and everybody and Ronis, right? Like, isn't Adam Ronis the funnest person to root against? So that's a fun thing. It is. Yeah, he's a great one.
The Cowboys do have 9-8 written all over them, so I can see that under plus 118, like looking like pretty sharp there.
And like you were saying, like CeeDee Lamb hasn't even reported yet. And I would include Micah Parsons in that. If he goes down, the Cowboys are in trouble discussion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's done. Like, if it all goes right, it goes well. There's a few of those teams, right? Like the Jets they're very fragile with Rodgers and Mike Williams and Tyron Smith. If it all goes right, it's going to be great. But I just feel like it's so thin with the Cowboys. If CeeDee Lamb actually holds out and he doesn't show up, does Jake Ferguson get 140 targets? Is Brandon Cooks gonna be? Thank you. They're in trouble, man. Jalen, I'm actually looking around at guys like Jalen Brooks and Jalen Tolbert and like the 10 guys named Jalen they have. Ryan Flournoy. Like, I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, maybe there is a sleeper here because they got nothing.
Flournoy was my 6th round pick in a dynasty rookie draft as a taxi squad stash. So now
maybe
that doesn't look so bad.
They got another Jalen whose name escapes me now. That Jalen Cropper. He just fumbled a punt in the last game. But one of these Jalen's could pop. I don't know, because that's how we got Puka Nacua, right? Like, the Rams traded it. They didn't have picks. They didn't have money, and Puka Nacua just so happened to be the second best wide receiver behind Cooper Kupp. Just so happened to be incredible. if it's CeeDee Lamb and nobody, maybe there is a sleeper from that team. But I don't know. They're going to need somebody to step up.
Josh.
And then you got the whole running back situation there. They bring back Ezekiel Elliott. He's pre-washed like a good pair of jeans. And I don't know if Rico Daddle's going to be anything like that's the. If I were going to plant my flag on any of the Cowboy running backs, it'd probably be him. But it's very well possibility he might just be a guy. So
I opened one of these. I couldn't contain myself, so I opened one of these packs yesterday, and I pulled this. What do you think about? It's a Deuce Vaughn.
Forgot about him.
Deuce Vaughn patch. I think this one's worth. If you sell it at the right price, it's worth about 75 cents. But
has he grown 3 inches and added 15 pounds in the off season?
30 pounds, Jared.
Yeah.
30 pounds.
Like,
no, he is not. But his dad's still one of the coaches. So
no, his dad's one of the coaches, but he's also like a literal child.
He is
in terms of like body type, at least.
It's not happening. It's not happening. But I'm rooting for him. As of 6:15 yesterday, when I cracked that pack of cards, big fan of his.
There you go.
That's funny how that works, right?
Funny how that works. All of a sudden, I was like, well, maybe. I thought about it.
Maybe if the right people get hurt, and probably you find a way.
You can tell how I feel because this isn't in any sort of protective case.
Yeah, there's that could be given away for free in the things I was talking about before the show, the little rip and riffs on the back.
I think so.
Josh Latshaw checks in. I still plant my flag on the push being as effective because it wasn't as tied to Kelsey as much as people made it seem, referring to the tush push. Although I don't think they use it as much now that Barkley is there. They'll use him in short to goal line to save Hurts.
I love Josh Latshaw, man. He's been following me since I'm not even kidding, 300 followers. And since I've known him for so long, I know he's a massive Eagles fan. And I don't believe a word you say, Josh. So get that Eagles propaganda out of the chat.
So here's what would concern me with the Eagles and the tush push since we're on this. So Coop, I'm sure you read that huge ESPN piece like last week or the week before on like the rift between Sirianni and Hurts and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I wonder how much of that is actually tied to the tush push and like the fact that, you know, it's not a nothing play. Like, you know, Jalen Hurts, obviously he can squat a ton of weight and like he's, you know, a big, strong guy. But, you know, eventually that takes a physical toll when you're running that as many times as you are. And I just wonder if like he's just like, can't somebody else do this shit?
Look what happened to Tank Dell last year. Just in the goal line play, gets rolled up on from behind and just, you know, hurts his leg. It could happen in those piles. Those piles are brutal. And I will say this, one underrated part of the Kelsey part of the tush push, he says it's not as tied to Kelsey as people seem. Go back to the end of last year. And the league kind of noticed that Travis Kelsey was picking up the ball. When he would go to pick up the ball
and moving it forward,
he would move it forward, right?
Yes.
And then they started throwing flags. This offseason, Kelsey, now that he retired, on the podcast, he's like, oh yeah. He's like, if you're not cheating a little, then I mean, what are you doing? He's like, it's so fun, such a funny clip because he's like, yeah, Tom Brady, I'm all for whatever he was doing with the balls. He made it better, great. You know, he's like, we'll be doing the stuff in camp where it's like, how many pull-ups can you do? And I'm like figuring out a way to like jump on my first one. He's like, whatever I could do to get ahead. He's like, so for me, he's like, yeah, of course we would do that. He's like, you know, I'm a veteran. You know, some of these refs have only been around for a couple of years. He's like, yeah, of course I'll pick up the ball and move it. Maybe they'll keep getting away with it, but last year it was brought to the attention of league officials and they started calling. So, I mean, every little edge comes together and it's great. You start peeling away some of those edges. Maybe not as great.
Right. And I'm not going to say rookie center, but inexperienced center replacing him. So does he know all the tricks of the trade and how much are they going to be looking out for that?
Exactly. Even though it may have not been tied to Jason Kelsey, center's a very important position. They just had one of the best of the last 40 years. So that's not an easy thing to replace. So got to factor that in as well.
A lot of audibles, a lot of communication that needs to be done. It's a lot of these schemes are a counting game, you know, and you got guys moving around all over the place. You count wrong. Now the quarterback's getting popped, you know. So
all right.
We'll see.
All right, so we took a look at the NFC East there. We got a couple of AFC East fans here, myself with the Jets and Coop with the Patriots. Why don't we take a look at their odds and win totals there? As you can see, the Bills are slight favorites over the Jets to take the division, with the Dolphins not too far behind, and then the Patriots there at plus 2,400. Don't see them winning it this year. You've had your time in the sun. Now it's time to pay the other end of that. Enjoy that for the next few years. And then you look at the win totals there. Patriots expected to be 4.5. Dolphins 9.5, Bills 10.5, Jets 9.5. Jared, start with you again. Anything there jumping out at you? Anything that you like?
I kind of like the Dolphins to win the division at plus 220.
Okay.
You know, as the third long shot there. It's not really even that long a shot at plus 220, but I love the weapons they have there with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, and obviously the running backs that they have. I'm not convinced that Devon Achane is going to live up to his draft hype necessarily, but I don't necessarily think it matters in terms of winning games and scheme and whatnot, just because, you know, Mike McDaniel is such a good coach and they have other options, you know, with Raheem Mostert. I think the defense will be a little bit better. So it's also a little bit of an anti-Jets pick. Like, I'm just never going to bet on the Jets to do anything or have any modicum of success. And I am a little bit concerned with the Bills, just with some of the pieces that they lost in the offseason. So if I were going to take one of these, I'd lean towards Miami winning the division at plus 220.
Well, I like that because I already have money on Miami to win the division. I already jumped on this bet ahead of time. So I'm in on that. I just think the big part is the coach, man. When you watch these games for the 49ers and now the Texans and the Dolphins, I think this offense that utilizes the fullback, has an elite left tackle, uses a crazy amount of motion. I know the league's going to try and, you know, pull back on the cheat motion where, you know, they're getting a little bit of a vertical at the end of the, you know, it is what it is. But I think that it's just too explosive. And they knew what was important to the offense and made sure that they have enough of it. Like, if Raheem Mostert goes down, it doesn't matter because they have Devon Achane and they now have Jalen Wright, right? Losing
Right.
Connor Williams hurts, losing Robert Hunt hurts, but I think the team is still going to be just fine. I worry about the Bills, man. It's not just losing Stephon Diggs and 130 targets. The guy was getting nearly 70 first downs a year, right? That has us in on Dalton Kincaid. I got a stack of Dalton Kincaid cards right next to me, betting on him having a really good year here. But it's a lot to overcome. And the Jets are just very fragile. That's the word, is that Aaron Rodgers, old, cranky, you know, could retire at any moment. I wouldn't be shocked, you know. And then you've got Mike Williams, injury prone, Tyron Smith, super injury prone, right? Hassan Reddick holding out. I think I like the Dolphins here. And then, of course, you know, bet the overs on all the Patriots stuff. Patriots are back. No big deal. Hey, Drake made a star. Patriots are back. Don't worry about it. I tried to sneak that in as much.
So Patriots to win the division at plus 2,400 is what we're saying.
There's not a.
Juju Smith-Schuster, addition by subtraction.
Correct.
There's not a lot of wins. All right, let me go through here, and you stop me and say the word "win" when it's a definitive Patriots win. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't say anything otherwise. We'll let the air speak. Cincinnati Bengals at Bengals. Seattle Seahawks at home. Jets, New York Jets on the road on a Thursday night.
Short week.
I think it could be a win.
All right, I will take it.
If it was,
It's
they have
in
a
New
history
York
of
on,
beating the Jets.
It's in New York on Thursday. There's
Right. Well, it's also a short week for the Jets.
Every home Patriots game this year is at 1:00. I got free tickets to go to a game, and I literally can't go. I could pick any game I wanted. I literally can't use the tickets because I have to do the shows and stuff. I could, even if they had one home 4:00 game, I could have gone. I can't go. So I'd be like, I can't use it.
when you're a crappy team, you're in that early 1:00 Eastern slot.
Jets, maybe. This one's a win, definitely. At San Francisco.
You bet. All the way.
Okay. Miami Dolphins on the road. Down there, we don't win. Texans.
No.
So we get Jacksonville, but we have to play them in London.
Neutral site. Maybe if they got off to a bad start, sometimes getting on a road trip like that can set you right.
We'll call it maybe. Jets.
If you're going to give them, you got to give them a split. The Patriots aren't sweeping the Jets. So if you're going to give them one, you got to give them the other one.
At Tennessee.
That's winnable.
I think it's the game they could win.
That was a team Jared talked about last week, taking the under on 5, I believe 5.5 wins it was.
At Chicago. The books have Chicago winning this. But yeah, not going to win that. Rams.
No.
Dolphins. Colts.
They got a good defense.
No. Cardinals.
Maybe. Yeah, that's one I could give you. That's yeah.
Okay, then it goes Buffalo
Oh.
in 2 of the last 3 games. So those are losses. And then Chargers.
So we have 2 maybes, 2 wins, and then another maybe. So we'll call it what? 3 wins, 3.5 wins.
I have 5 fingers up, and they're almost all maybes. So, and I can't bet the under on 4.5. That's just too stupid. So I just stay away from it. Just you guys stay away.
I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. I think the defense is probably better than you're giving them credit for, and they're getting Christian Gonzalez back. And
They traded Judon away.
Right, they did trade Judon, which hurts, but like Judon's also an older player, and they're moving on. And I'm acknowledging that Bill Belichick has a lot to do with what they're scheming defensively. We'll see what Gerard Mayo does.
Christian Barmore has blood clots. It might. I mean, you never know with that, but what I'm hearing is that like it could range from anything. He could be back next week. His career could be over. So it's like it's. I don't know, man.
I guess my point is, I think the defense is good enough where they could probably fluke into a couple wins.
I do think they have a strong enough defense to steal a couple for sure. I would buy that.
Yeah, like when the Chargers come up to New England, the Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh punch you in the mouth. Chargers comes up to New England in December. What do you think the over-under for that game is going to be? Like 10?
28. I was going to say like 23.
28. Yeah, I think 28 is actually pretty reasonable.
Well,
I mean, it's just going to be a weird season. But I like Drake May. I think that he could develop into, a Josh Allen type guy. But even Josh Allen wasn't him. What Josh Allen's completion percentage as a rookie was 52%. Like Drake May.
It took Josh Allen 3 years to get good.
Yeah. Stephon Diggs. Yeah. It's like, so I think Drake May could be interesting for fantasy if he's willing to run, but that's about it. That's probably enough Patriots talk forever.
I want to go back to the Bills for a second before we start ripping some packs here. And Coop, I know you're itching, so you can go first. Jared mentioned the term addition by subtraction before, and I understand everything Stephon Diggs brings to the table, but he's also a complete and utter malcontent. The guy is never happy anywhere. Do you think there's some sort of like, hey, this guy's out of the locker room and there's a little bit more of a freer, happier Bills team? I mean, I'm stretching, but that does factor sometimes when a guy's just a total mal. It kind of ruins the locker room. And the Bills choked in the playoffs, and maybe that's a part of the reason.
Well, the reality, I think you're onto something there, because didn't it feel like the entirety of the Bills' success was based on what side of the bed Stephon Diggs woke up that day?
Yes.
It was, if he played well, they were unstoppable, and when he didn't show up, they didn't look like a team. And I think that's your point here, is that like Gabe Davis wasn't stepping up. They just weren't a team. They were 2 guys, right? You know what I mean? So they could be in trouble. I mean, they could be in trouble, but maybe they play as a more cohesive unit, and maybe they are a little less predictable.
Here's what
big loss. They lost Matt Milano, who is their best coverage linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bills, I can tell you, as a guy that I do a ton of the tight end stuff, the weekly tight end stuff. When they have Matt Milano, this is a team you want to bench your tight end against. When he's been out, it's just you just start your guys. So like, they go back to a team that now they have to figure out how to cover running backs and tight ends again, because that's what Milano was very, very, very good at. And if he's going to come back, it won't be till December. I think he tore his bicep.
Torn bicep, yeah, which is a multi-month injury.
Good God.
Here's what concerns me about the Bills. You mentioned that with Stephon Diggs and what side of the bed he wakes up on. I think to an extent that also applies to Josh Allen. And I say that because he has a tendency to play hero ball, and when he plays hero ball, it does not go well because he's forcing the ball into coverage. He's taking unnecessary hits, and that's just the way he plays. There's a little too much of the bad Brett Favre in his game,
right?
Where, I mean, like the great Brett Favre, like it works, and aesthetically it's pleasing. Like when he, threads the ball into triple coverage and whatnot, but you also have to take the bad with that. And I worry with Diggs no longer there, and them not really doing a whole lot to replace them. Like I know they drafted the kid Coleman out of Florida State and whatnot, but I feel like we're gonna see some of that bad Josh Allen until the Bills kind of figure out what they have.
Josh Allen, he throws a lot of arm punts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's, and there's a debate. Joe Burrow has actually talked, and sorry to ramble on. This is the last point. Joe Burrow has talked about the that not all sacks and not all interceptions are created equally, but it sure does seem like Josh Allen throws a lot of really forced and ugly interceptions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Curtis Samuel, I know he's hurt and he's going to be out week to week, but I thought that was actually a nice fit for Buffalo considering they were going cheap. So that was a guy that I was high on, maybe selfishly because I have shares of him in Dynasty, but nonetheless, I thought that was actually a cheap, good marriage there between the two.